Hey. So, between my husband and I, we've lived in Spain, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, and France. And now our entire family holds residency in Mexico. So, when I'm talking about moving abroad, I'm speaking from real experience navigating all of these different systems. And today, for our Mexico Monday, we're going to talk about mistakes that many people from the US make when they are making a move to Mexico. Okay, so Mexico is one of the most talked about places right now for many Americans who are thinking about moving abroad. And of course, I understand why, because I'm planning my move to Mexico in the next few months. But I also see people who are making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And those mistakes often create a whole lot of unnecessary stress, anxiety, and it's avoidable most of the time. So, in today's Mexico Monday, I want to talk about three of the mistakes that I see like all the time with people from the US who are moving to Mexico and how to approach these things a little bit differently so that you can maybe avoid those mistakes. And this honestly does not apply just to Mexico, having lived in different places. It really applies to moving abroad in general. Okay? So, for those of you who are new here, I'm Dr. Raquel, and I'm super excited to be here with you today and talk about some of the mistakes that we can try to avoid with this move to Mexico. And the biggest mistake that I think people make is a mindset mistake. So, coming to Mexico, expecting things to work like the US, even during my scouting trip there, I was like, this is a problem. And a lot of people think like things will work the same, systems will operate the same, processes will go in the time frames that you're used to. And even with just making our appointment to the Kanhe. Um, we plan to go for several weeks over the spring break here in the US, like elementary school spring break. Only to talk to our immigration facilitator who was like, basically from the day that we plan to leave the US to the day that we plan to leave Mexico, there would be no offices open that entire time. So we would have gone to Mexico had we not had our facilitator. We would have gone to Mexico planning to have our Kanhe appointment and then had to go back to Mexico like a few weeks later for our actual Kanhe appointment because all the offices would have been closed because we were assuming that the systems operate the same way that they do in the US, which is okay, it's a holiday, you take a few days off, then you go back to work. That is not the case in Mexico. And so remembering that it is a different country and it's easier to say but it's different from the US. Maybe if you're not from the US, it's different from the systems, the rhythms, the things that you do in your home country, the same way another state may be different. Sometimes things take longer. Sometimes you might need to go in person to get something done versus online. And sometimes the answer might be come back tomorrow. And that's okay because it's not the US and it can function in the way that it does because it is a different place. And so I was watching this video and I heard this man say it, and I was like, wow, this is such a great way to describe like the whole experience of moving abroad. But what he said was it takes a type A personality to get abroad, but you really can't keep a type A personality once you are abroad. You have to be able to kind of turn it off and on when necessary. And the people who I find that struggle most abroad are the people who are constantly comparing everything to the US. Um, Even like, for example, I know that there have been times living in other countries where I'm like, I just need to stop. Like, I live here. I need to stop converting this to US dollars because I'm not using US dollars. So whatever the cost is the cost. It doesn't matter what the cost would be in the US. And so the people who really thrive are the ones who adapt to a country that they're living in instead of trying to recreate the US somewhere else. And if the US were that awesome for you, maybe you wouldn't have left. So recreating it might not be the best strategy. And so it's important to really just embrace the country that you're in, specifically Mexico, for what it is. It's a great place, period. People live there, they thrive there, they have a great life there. And so that's all we're trying to do as well. Okay, so that's the first mistake that I find that people consistently make with Mexico or other places that they're moving to around the world. And the second is choosing a city the wrong way. So the mistake I see here is I see people choosing a city before they really understand the lifestyle that they want. So they start asking questions like, okay, where's the cheapest place to live? Where are there other Americans moving? What city is like trending or popular right now amongst people who look like me, people who act like me, people with the same hobbies as me? But those aren't always the best questions to ask. There are better questions like, do I want a slower pace of life or a busy city? And if you don't know, that's also okay. It's okay to just pick a place, but be flexible that if that's not a good fit for you, maybe you'll try somewhere else. So I like, for example, living in Antwerp, Belgium, we were in the middle of the city and we were moving from the middle of the country. So where there were like crickets and cows, we were moving to where it was like bustling, busy, hearing yelling and cars and honking all day and all night long. So it's a very different vibe to it. And although I always thought to myself, I am not a city person, I definitely preferred that city. Would I prefer every city? Not necessarily, but I did prefer that city. Just being kind of in the bustle of it all, being able to walk everywhere, not having to drive if I didn't want to. I could bike wherever I wanted to go. Public transportation was around the corner from my house. It was safe. And so I really enjoyed the kind of get up and go flexibility lifestyle that the city offered, which I never would have thought that I wanted. But I wasn't sure what I wanted at that time, so I was willing to give it a try. And so if you don't know exactly what lifestyle you want, that is also okay. But it's just important that you're flexible if it is something where you're like, I'm not really sure. And so, do I want to be near a beach or do I prefer like a historic colonial city? That's also okay. So, for example, with us in Merida, like we have decided that that's where we're going to start is Merida. But I'm not sure. I'm not like completely sold that Merida is where we're going to end. I know that Merida is a super hot place in the summer. I am of a certain age and I'm not trying to be sweating my eyeballs out every summer. And so we also are open to like, okay, maybe Merida's a spot up until the summer. And then in the summer, we, like other expats, go other places. And then we come back after the summer's over. So even when we were there during our scouting trip, we went to Progreso, and which is like 20 minutes from Merida, right on the beach. And we met a Mexican man there, and he was just kind of chatting with us, like, oh, you're planning to move to Merida. That's great. But have you considered Progreso? It's like way cooler, maybe even spending the summers in Progreso. And we're like, yeah, it's not a bad idea. And so we are planning to go there, but we're also very open and flexible that if that's not the spot, then we're going to visit other places. We're going to try other places and see what the spot might be. And so another thing that I see is like understanding, do I want a big expat community or do I want a deeper local immersion? And for me, I definitely want there to be like a supportive expat community because I remember how valuable that's been over just the course of the other countries that we've lived in. Um, but honestly, having that deep local immersion is clutch because they know everything. They are the people who have lived there forever. And so, especially when you're navigating like legal things in terms of like visas and stuff like that, expat communities are so, so valuable. But when you're navigating just like life in a new place, the local community is super valuable. So for me, I would like both. I would like to be able to like, I want some Mexican community in Mexico, period. That is what I would like to have. And I also would like to be able to tap into the expat community as well. So for example, wherever we've been around the world, I enjoy cooking. At least I enjoyed it pre-children. And so like when we lived outside of the US, there is no Thanksgiving in Belgium. There's no Thanksgiving in Switzerland. And so I typically would cook like huge Thanksgiving meals, have every expat come over, or there might be another expat that's cooking a Thanksgiving meal, and we all like bring a turkey and stuffing and all those things over to their house so that we can enjoy it together. Those things are important to me. I want to keep the traditions that I'm used to and that I love going during those times. But at the same time, I am so excited to celebrate Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. We celebrate it, my family, we celebrate it here in the US, but I'm like, we get to celebrate it Mexico. Like, what? That is the best. I'm so excited to celebrate it in Mexico. And so for us, what's important is a balance of both. But it's important that you think about that. Like, what is important? Because you might have a huge expat community where the local community has been pushed out in many places because they just can't afford what the expats are paying. And so that is a real situation around the world, especially now with so many people leaving the US. So it's something that you really should be thinking about. And the right location really depends on the lifestyle that you want. And so that's another thing that my husband and I talk about in terms of Merida is because I'm like, we want a slower pace of life. We want a slower lifestyle, and Merida might not give us that. And so we have, like, our other places that we plan on scoping out while once we get to like full time in Mexico. But we have other places that we want to scope out to see if there is a different place that gives us that lifestyle better than Merida might. And so when you're choosing your city, you want to think about the life you want to live in addition to things that most people consider like cost of living, popularity, and those other things that are the bigger questions that people are asking. So you want to think about it holistically in that way. Okay. And then the final thing I want to touch on are the housing decisions that I hear people regret the most, specifically for Mexico. And I've asked lots of people in Mexico this question. Thankfully, thinking about it, I really have been able to build like a Mexican community already, and I am super excited about that. I have lots of people where I'm like, if I have a question, I'm like, okay, so this is what I'm thinking. What about this? I just sent a message to someone last week where I was like, hey, I love your apartment. So how much you pay for that? And what area is it in? And what is it like? And so it was just like really important for me to be able to build that. And I'm very proud of myself. I'm just realizing that I do have a Mexican community already, and I'm very excited about that. I tell y'all to do that. And so it's good to know that I'm actually practicing what I preach. Um, and so, one thing that I see people doing too often is committing to long term housing too quickly. And so, when you are moving to a new country, and let's say you sell your house in the US and you're like, I'm going to buy a home in this new place that I live, you do not want to buy a home right away. You do not want to sign a year-long lease right away because the reality is that when you first arrive in a place, you don't really know it yet, even if it's a place that you've visited over and over and over again. You might be visiting in a specific location. You might be visiting at a resort. You might be like, oh, well, the resort's around the corner. I know this area. I go to this restaurant and to this place. But if you're not living on the street, then you might not know that there's that dog that barks on that street starting at 2 a.m. from 2 to 5 every day. You might not know that, oh, but when it rains really hard, because the resort doesn't have that around the corner, but when it rains really hard, then this area of the city floods. Or you might not know that also when it rains really hard, it floods because this area has an older sewage system and it also gets stinky. Or you might not know that, like, oh, there's a bakery right here and I am trying not to eat sweets every day or trying not to go to this bakery every day and it smells delicious and so I don't want to be right next to this place. Side note, I lived above a chocolate shop in Belgium. When I tell you that was the best experience, it's so nice to wake up to like freshly made pastries. But anyway, I digress. And so you really want to understand the neighborhood before you jump into something long term. Online listings do not tell you how noisy something is. It does not tell you how busy a neighborhood is. It does not tell you if you have that one person who parks 12 cars down the street, that one family, because they have dinner together every evening. It does not tell you what traffic is like. It does not tell you the overall energy and feel of a place. And so you do not want to be like, oh, this place is cute. I can see myself like living here, moving in this apartment, but what about what's outside the apartment? It does not tell you that the trash pickup is right outside the window. They are not going to take that picture and post that when they are trying to rent it or sell it. And so you really want to think about, okay, let's start with something temporary like an Airbnb. One point of advice that I heard, which is what we plan to implement, is start with an Airbnb so that you can really experience the area before you're committing long term, which of course is going to be more expensive. So, understanding it's a privilege to be able to start with an Airbnb. But what you also can do from an Airbnb is then negotiate the price with the actual owner of the Airbnb in on the ground, because Airbnb has fees, which can hike up prices. But it's possible that if you are staying somewhere short term and you like to stay there longer, you can negotiate that with the actual owner directly versus like through Airbnb. And that might cost a little bit more initially, but it can really save you a lot of frustration later. And so I will remind you and encourage you again, I am not your legal advice, but I would just really say do not start out with anything long term, because you just never know what that's going to result in. So, Mexico is a super incredible place. I love it so much. And people who thrive in Mexico are usually ones who approach their move from like flexibility, curiosity, patience, openness, humility. And if you're thinking about moving to Mexico or moving abroad in general, really, you really want to start with what is this life that I want to live? Like, what does it look like? Am I like bustling through a city? Am I biking? Am I walking slowly, meandering through fields? Are there people? Are there animals? Are there trees? Like, what area do I want to be in? Then choose a place that supports that life. So, not just thinking about what's trending, but also thinking about what is the actual life that you want to live. Okay. So, if you're interested in some real conversations about life in Mexico, moving abroad, make sure that you subscribe, because every week we talk about these topics here on Mexico Mondays. And so I look forward to seeing y'all next week. Okay, bye.